Thank you, everybody, for taking the time out of your busy days to join us today. You're in for a real treat because today we've got some of the most amazing digital citizenship experts around joining us. We've got Michael Drezick, Marialice Curran, and Deanne Polian, who are going to help us get to grips with the subject and share their knowledge and expertise on how you can commit to digital citizenship in your classrooms and your learning communities. Now, hopefully by the end of this webinar, you'll have a better idea of what digital citizenship is and how you can use Wakelet to improve it and come away with some great ideas that you can start using in your classrooms tomorrow. And it's really important that you have fun in the chat box. So like you're doing right now, introduce yourself, ask as many questions as you like, and we'll make sure to try and answer as many as we can by the time the webinar is out. So let's kick us off with a few introductions. Obviously, I'm Misbah from Wakelet, but Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Michael Drezick. I am the District Technology Integration Specialist at Lakeshore CSD here in Angola, New York, where I'm coming to you live from today. I am also considered a teacher on special assignment in my 16th year in education. So I spent 10 years as a middle school math teacher, and I'm in my 6th year as a tech integrator or instructional coach, and love getting to collaborate around digital citizenship with people like Marialice and Deanne. So I'll turn it over to them.
Amazing. And Marialice, we really recently collaborated with Digital Citizenship Institute. Love what you guys are doing. Tell us a little bit about you and what your organization does.
Okay, so last week we just hosted online for the entire week. I was so happy that you were here. Is there an echo on your end?
Not that I know of, no. I'll try and mute my mic, but just go ahead, yeah.
Okay. So last week we hosted, there were 37 countries that were registered, where we connected classrooms, where classrooms were teaching other classrooms how they do digital citizenship. And it was an opportunity to inspire and empower other students around the world. And so I just happened to be here at Lakeshore Central, working with this school community. Last year, they put on what you saw last week for our Digital Citizenship Summit. They put on a student-led Digital Citizenship Summit where instead of talking at kids, we had the opportunity to learn with them, and we invited the outside community to learn with the students, and it was so powerful. So I'm here right now to continue that work.
Amazing. And Deanne, obviously, like Michael, this is very last minute for you. It's like, I don't know, 5 minutes notice maybe. Kristina couldn't join us today. So we got Michael and Deanne to jump in very, very quickly. Marialice put it together. Deanne, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So this is my 2nd year as a tech integrator in my district, but this is my 19th year of teaching, and I was a secondary English teacher before this. So this is a whole new world for me, but it's been so exciting and interesting.
And I also got to give a shout out to my fellow 5th Wave Wakelet ambassadors. And I know Kristina is a rock star Wakelet ambassador, so we're grateful to get to fill in here just for her for today. But we miss
amazing. Thank you so much for the intros, guys. So now when we talk about digital citizenship, which is essentially what this webinar is all about, and obviously we had Digital Citizenship Week last week, and during the webinar that I did with Eileen Winokur, who's joining us in the chat today, I learned a lot. And, you know, we always say this at Wakelet, we're not educators. We just made this platform and we kind of take as much as we can from the educator community in terms of feedback, advice, and that type of thing. So as a company, as a platform, we're learning. So hopefully this webinar should kind of teach me a little bit as well about what digital citizenship is. I think that a lot of people might not really know what digital citizenship is. I think that, you know, we hear the word around so much, and I think that everyone kind of has a different sort of definition of it, even though it's essentially the same type of thing. So what I wanted to ask you is, the first question essentially is, for everyone out there who doesn't know, what is digital citizenship and what does it kind of mean to you? And feel free to answer in any order.
I'm going to let Marialice start because we just actually talked about this today with our teachers. You know, why are we here today? Why did we take you out of your classrooms to work on digital citizenship, and what is your role in it? Because we really do believe that everybody plays a part in teaching digital citizenship. So I don't know if you have a formal definition from the Institute, or I know, like exactly like Misbah said, everyone defines it differently.
Right. It really depends where people are coming from. But, the big message is it doesn't matter what grade you teach or what your content is. This is the one common denominator. When you look at the ISTE standards, digital citizenship is the only one that is in all of the standards. And so it means a lot of things to a lot of different people. To me, it really means these human connections online and really providing experiences. And so just this past June at ISTE, Richard Collada, the CEO, had made this big announcement that we all need to make a commitment to digital citizenship. It was #DigCitCommit. If you haven't gone to digcitcommit.org, you should. But redefining, taking that, a lot of times digital citizenship has been in online safety. The conversation started and ended there. And now, the majority are now catching up, saying from that reactive place to go to a proactive, take those don'ts and change them into do statements. And so DigCitCommit has 5 new competencies. The new definition of digital citizenship is experiences. How do we provide experiences for our students to be inclusive, to be informed, to be engaged, to be balanced, and to be alert? And when you look at it that way, well, then it's not just one more thing that we need to add to our curriculum. These are skill sets that we can embed into what we're already doing.
Right. Anything to add, Dan? Or?
Yeah, no, I think one of the things I learned last year working with Marialice and working with our students was they know when we ask them what digital citizenship is, they know what to not do. They know don't share, don't talk to strangers online, don't. But I think through our work last year, they learned how they could make positive changes in their community and how they can use social media for good. And I think that was really a big thing, and that's part of those 5 competencies now. So,
and we're looking at it as about the human connections online. Digital citizenship is really about how do we improve those connections and how do we make our community a better place, and how can we leverage technology to help improve our community. So that's been a big focus for us because everyone that's here watching today knows how many moving parts there are to a school community, and how do you bring all of those together as a positive force for good.
It's that idea of we've got to learn how to humanize the person sitting next to us. Because if we can't do that, we're never able to apply it to people around the world that might look different, speak a different language, practice different traditions or customs. If you can't do that, then you can't apply it to people across the screen. And that includes of local, global, and digital, not in their own silos, but as one.
And I almost seen sometimes as though, and I know that this is kind of an age-old adage that people behave differently when they're online as to how they are in real life. And I think that especially young people, because it tends to be an arena that's kind of free of consequence in a way. If they do something bad online, nobody really is there to kind of tell them about it. Whereas if they do it in the classroom or in real life, they get to learn from those mistakes. Whereas online, I feel like even though it's so vast and everyone seems connected, it can sometimes be quite lonely and it's difficult to learn those lessons. And I suppose that leads into the second question, which is, you spoke about technology, Michael, and technology is obviously, the internet's changed everything in such a short space of time. The amount of challenges that students have nowadays social challenges compared to what they had in the past is different. You've got cyberbullying, you've got staying safe online, that type of thing. How have things changed in recent years when it comes to young people being online and having such easy access to the internet? And how do you think digital citizenship kind of helps improve the skills which are needed to overcome those challenges?
I think for us, the challenge is that our kids are getting connected younger and younger. So whether or not they may be ready to use that technology, they're jumping in. So they're jumping into the deep end, using a lot of these tools and a lot of these spaces and a lot of these platforms. But they really need guidance, and they need the positive role models. And I think that's where we as educators can come in and really do it's a call to action for all educators to do the best job we can teaching positive digital citizenship.
And I feel like we're obligated to teach digital citizenship because we know it. We live in it. We're a part of that. And our parents don't really know the right way to teach that to their kids, and that's part of it lays on us to do that, I think, for other people.
I think Kevin Honeycutt, he had, this is years ago, a great quote about that nobody's out there in this digital playground, for recess duty, and there's nobody out there. So he said it much more eloquently than I just tried to paraphrase it. But
our kids are living on a digital playground and nobody is on recess duty. I believe it.
Yeah.
Yes. And so when you think about that, this isn't really, like, to tie it back to technology, this isn't really necessarily about the tech. Talk about back to Wakelet, about the humans are coming. Mm-hmm. When you're learning to ride a bike, think of all the different stages of that bike, between the training wheels, somebody holding the back of the bike as you're learning how to balance. This is exactly what needs to, like, right now, you have to be 13 years old before you're supposed to be on apps. A lot of kids obviously check that box and say they have a different birthday. But if we aren't providing opportunities and experiences for our students to try it out, that balancing act, then they're
not getting prepared.
Right. And when you have a teacher or a classroom that says, well, that's not my responsibility, or like, I don't have time for that, we all have to find time for it.
And I think that links into, it really builds into a question, which I asked Callum, who's joined us in the chat today, Callum Nightingale from Wakelet. I asked him, I said, are there any questions that you'd like to ask that you know, you'd like to learn from? And Callum said he'd like to understand, well, not really understand, but almost philosophize, where does the responsibility lie? Is it the teachers? Is it the parents? Is it the community when it comes to teaching those digital citizenship skills? And have you, as teachers, almost like adopted that responsibility and just said, look, it's not coming from the parents, we have to kind of step in here and take charge? Or do you find that quite often the parents do take an active part in that? And if so, what kind of steps have we taken to educate the parents on that type of thing?
Yeah, we've held some community nights here with parents. When we put on the summit here, where the students led the sessions to teach the teachers and to teach the parents, we open it up to anybody to attend. You know, we spend a good chunk of our day with these kids. So that's where we really felt it was, you know, this is our calling to make sure that we do this right. But it definitely, you've heard the phrase, it takes a village. It takes everybody. Right. And if somebody is not pulling their weight, you know, we're going to have some work to do, you know, even more so. So it always lies a challenge, because when the kids are using technology when no one's around, how will they act? What will they do? Will they use it for good? You know, like, we could build each other up online, or we can tear each other down. And I think we really hope that in the work that we're doing in our schools, that we've set them up for success when the adult's not alongside them.
Gotcha.
It comes back to kind of character education. Now, I'm aging myself, right? But that's where they used to talk about what you do when you think people are watching. That's about your reputation. But what you do when you think nobody's watching, that's really about your character and your choices and your actions and your words, and they matter. And you know, I've been at this work for a while now, and there are different angles that you can go. But I really believe that community approach is the best way to involve everyone. So it's not like digital citizenship is just for students at school. But when you involve the entire community, the parents realize, oh, this is something that we need to do at home. And then the adults realize this isn't just something that, you know, my teen does at school and at home. I have a responsibility. And when you look at like the workforce 4.0, you know, this is the foundation that absolutely everybody needs, no matter where you live, what language you speak. This is universal. And
we're really pouring everything into this work around digital, and students are still making mistakes, and parents are still making mistakes. You know, it's going to happen, and we are, right. We're learning together, and we're really just trying to, you know, like I saw someone say, model it. You know, we have to be the best models that we can, and grow together.
And I think that what you just mentioned then, Marialice, it feeds so well into my next question. The first time that I really heard about digital citizenship was when we were discussing Wakelet with teachers and ways that Curation can help that. And there were lots of different ways that teachers were using Wakelet. And they found that digital citizenship, well, a lot of residual skills that they got from the tasks that they were kind of doing on Wakelet and the activities that they're doing on Wakelet. One of those, the most prominent residual skills was digital citizenship. It improves digital citizenship. So for example, creating a student portfolio online. You know, we've got so many students now who are using Wakelet to essentially create these portfolios of really cool content that's either being created by the school about them or that they've created themselves, and create these awesome portfolios so that they can, by the end of their school year, when they graduate, at the end of school finishes, they have something tangible to show employers or to show, college admins, that type of thing. And the word digital citizenship came up, and my understanding of it was that part of it is helping students and young people develop the skills that are necessary to help them navigate the web as they get older for the future. So my question was, why is it important for students to really understand what digital citizenship is, and how have you seen any examples of how that prepares them for the future, as in digital citizenship tasks or elements which are there really to help prepare them for a future being online?
We've done some work with students doing like Genius Hour, where they're really studying something that they love and they find passion in, and then they're developing all these skills, these critical thinking skills, problem solving skills, using tech tools to help them along the way. They know how to complete a task, and they know how to complete something that is something passionate to them, and so that shows them like the right ways, positive ways to use technology. Also gets them ready for, going out into the workforce and knowing how to break down a task and solve their problems.
Amazing. Sorry, Marialice.
I just look at that and I think this is where and it happens to be Media Literacy Week. So I see this is the perfect, one of the competencies for the DigCit Commit is about how to provide experiences for students to be informed. And that really is where it goes hand in hand with media literacy. So how can we help our students be able to evaluate resources that they find online to be accurate? I know that the term, I think it's like the buzzword, it's been overused about fake news. Mm-hmm. But when I even think about using Wakelet as an experience for students to put these skills into action, that's powerful, because we're not talking at kids about how to, it's like that actionable piece that they need to learn these skills to curate a collection and to make sure that the collection is of the best possible resources possible.
And what sort of responses do you have from the students themselves when it comes to digital citizenship? I think the closest that we had when I was in school was PSHE. And we sort of took that lesson as kind of like a free lesson in a way. Like the substance wasn't really there. I don't know if the teachers weren't trained very well in what it was. It tended to be like a maths teacher or a PE teacher or somebody who just jumped in to take the lesson. And that was like personal, social, health, economic kind of lessons. I'm not sure if you have it in the States, but in the UK we do. When you're kind of interacting with the students about digital citizenship, how do they behave with that? How do they react to that?
I think that this one looks different at different grade levels. One of the things that we've tried to do, and I think Wakelet is the perfect tool for this, we've tried to curate examples of other kids doing amazing things with technology. Try to kickstart a little inspiration. It's really easy to find negative stories in the news, but to work to find the positives. To the student that created the secret Instagram account to give compliments to every single student in his class, and then it was this account, something like that. Students using technology for social impact or social good, and then starting with those conversations around, hey, kids, even though they're young, these kids are using technology as a platform, and their name is out there. They're doing good for their community. How can you make a difference in your classroom, in your own school? Yeah. So we really try to focus it not around don't do this, don't do that. Well, we still have those conversations. We try to make that be the focus. What we can do. Before you post online, we always use that THINK acronym. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Right. Is it kind? And we really want to hear from the kids. I think the most important thing is to have let them also lead in that conversation, because anytime we do this digital citizenship work, if it's just the adults up there the entire time talking about digital citizenship, it doesn't stick, and the kids internalize it and personalize it. So that's been the focus around our work here at Lakeshore.
And I have to say, I have to commend, because I don't work for Lakeshore Central, but what they did last year is actually my wish for all school communities everywhere, because it invited the entire school community to be a learner before you're anything else. So, you know, to go back, that this isn't about the tech. This is about changing a narrative, changing your mindset. All you need to be is willing to be a learner. So I'm willing to learn alongside my child, my students, my colleagues. And when you look at that from that community lens, it's really powerful. That's when those headlines that we see, which are always, you know, sensational headlines about all the awful things that are happening, you know, to change into the really like how you can become a force for good.
And we've had conversations about what types of technology do you use in school. We've talked about it, and we've looked at all the powerful ways that they're using ed tech. But what are the technologies that you're using outside of school? And that helps to lead to some of those conversations. Well, what happens in those spaces? And sometimes, and we've done it here where we've had different scenarios. So, all right, well, what if you find yourself in this situation or this scenario? Because without having those conversations ahead of time, sometimes the kids can find themselves in a bind. Yeah. I see a question in the chat that talks about it being very difficult to engage high school students, and maybe what can be done to make it real for high schoolers. One of the things that we did with our high school classes last year at our Digital Citizenship Summit was they put on a carnival for the teachers. They actually turned all of the different digital citizenship topics into games. So that made it like interactive, and the kids had a ton of fun with it. They looked at the ethics. They looked at ethical scenarios, and they turned that into a game. I think of what some of the malicious. So yes, there was a game all about malicious behaviors. There was a game about analyzing online sources. But for our high school kids, turning it into that carnival in the gym for people to get like active and engaged. I
felt like I was back at the prom. It was all decorated like a carnival. They gave out porn. But
they were engaged. They were the leaders. And even when we talked to them afterward, that was the biggest thing for them. They were so excited to teach their teachers. They were so excited to teach the people that teach them every day, you know, and they felt like they knew something that their teachers didn't know.
Yeah.
And all the teachers were so happy to learn this stuff and excited and proud of the kids. So I think we have to just turn the tables sometimes and give them that chance to take the power, you know, take the conversation.
They were looking at things like private location services on an app and really getting into some stuff that our teachers didn't know. So that was powerful.
Right. I think turning it on its head a little bit and having those powerful moments where the students feel empowered enough to tell the teacher something that the teacher might not know. I think things like that are really likely to stick in their heads and you know, become something that's memorable, and then everybody can learn a lesson through that. I just wanted to go to a comment in one of the comments in the chat by Elena, who said, students have to be responsible for the info they send on the net, as it may influence their future, e.g. applying for a job. So I know we're going a little bit back on ourselves now, but this is a really good point that comes up quite often. Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, the list goes on, right? And we can't pretend that really young students aren't using these platforms. What types of things do you think are most effective when it comes to telling these kids? Because what happens is that it becomes a paradox, right? It's like we don't want to admit that children of that age are using the platform, so we don't teach them how to be safe on that platform, and then they end up just getting, you know, lost down the rabbit hole. What types of steps have you taken, or examples that you've taken, to kind of explain to students that things like, what if they post something online, whether it's a text message or a picture or whatever it might be, they've essentially posted it to the world. That can be captured, that can be reposted, it can be screenshotted, all those types of things. Do you find that challenging to speak with the students about, or are they quite open and candid about it? What have your experiences been like with things like that?
Yeah, some of them will be embarrassed to share, but what we just did an activity here today where we had the teachers Google themselves. What did you learn about yourself? What did you find? And we've done that same activity with the students here. Google, you know, what happens when you type in your name? What kind of footprint or what kind of trait is being put out there into the world? And sometimes that leaves that opens their eyes a little bit. You know, it's hard for us to keep up with all of the apps and tools that they're using, and they'll share them with you. But sometimes it's hard to know what goes on in those spaces. But just through that conversation. But that activity has been powerful for us to search yourself online, and what do you find out about yourself when you look? Some of the kids will find images and say, how is that showing up in Google Images?
Right.
You know, something like that.
I've done, I was in higher ed for 10 years teaching teachers. So I've had some experiences where undergraduates have made really poor decisions. We needed to actually, a teacher candidate was removed from the program because of a decision on social media. We tried to make it a teachable moment. And this is back in, I don't know, the early 2000s. And I remember, could I take something really negative and make it positive? So I wanted to be like Julius Verne's. Could I go around the world in 80 days? Could I get a tweet around the world? I didn't know if I could or I couldn't, but we did in 24 hours. Wow. That particular assignment I did, and my son at the time was like 5 years old. And, all the notifications were coming in. It was like ding, 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 ding. And I'd be like, oh, we got Argentina. And he'd go, we got Argentina. I'd be like, literally, I took out my old world map. He got into the map. But like, that's when we decided to create a mother and son account, kind of like riding a bicycle, holding that balancing act, that we could do some things prior to 13 to practice together. So a lot of classrooms have classroom accounts, whether they're going to be Twitter accounts or Instagram accounts. And like how when I went to school, I got to feed the fish for the day, or I got to be the line leader. You could have the tweeter for the day, the Instagram poster for the day. And then that gives students an opportunity before they're 13 to practice. And that I've seen as a really successful way to use that.
And I just wanted to, sorry, go on, Mike.
Well, back to the high schoolers too. Another thing that we've had our students do is participate. We've had our students participate in a Twitter chat. Nice. And this is at the high school level, but they're old enough to be on the platform. So under the teacher's guidance, we'd follow that hashtag. I think one of them was hashtag use tech for good, the number 4 and good. And it was a chat led by students. I know that there's a global ed student chat out there that happens once a month. So to bring the students to show them like, hey, this platform isn't all for entertainment. You can use this to leverage networking and connections. And if you're really passionate about surfing, you can go out there and connect with all experts in that field and really get connected. So we use that. Our 7th grade class followed along the chat on body image. In middle school that peer influence is everything. So to have the students actually contribute their voice in that, and in a social media platform like that, to realize, well, I can actually use this tool for good. That was powerful.
I just on that note as well, I'd like to shout out Sanchita in the chat, who said that with her high schoolers, one group played the role of employers checking the digital footprint of those who played prospective employees. She said that worked really well for them. So I think that having those practical examples is really cool. And just on that note as well, with Wakelet, we try and empower students to kind of take the web back into their own hands, right? To have this own quiet corner of the web, their Wakelet profile, where they have control over what content goes on there. That's the whole point of curation, in essence. Students might not know how to get search results taken off Google. I know that here in the UK, we have in Europe, we have maybe we're in Europe, I'm not 100% sure yet. It's still like this. We have the GDPR rules, and that essentially, allows you to clean up the web. If there's something on the web that is hosted on a website that you don't like, you can contact the hoster of that site, and by law they have to take it down. If they don't, they get fined. So that's helping it in that area a little bit. But we like to think that Wakelet allows not only students but anybody to have this place in the web where anything positive about themselves that they'd like to share, they can put that into one place, and then rather than just letting the potential employer Google them, they can send them their Wakelet handle instead, and then they get a full idea of who that person is, and they can kind of tailor that to however they like. Marialice, I see you.
Yeah, that gives the power back to them, where like I'm telling my story, I'm crafting my story, I'm curating it. That's powerful.
Exactly. Now, what sort of, we're in Media Literacy Week, right? Now, prior to this webinar, I'm ashamed to say I didn't know what that was. Could you tell us a little bit about media literacy and the types of skills that it develops and how it kind of links in with digital citizenship?
Well, I feel like Kristina would have been more of the expert to talk about media literacy,
Right.
but I see it, and that we're not two separate camps. Certainly, there is more of an emphasis in media literacy. There are things that make it different, but that part about digital citizenship, about being informed and being able to evaluate resources, and I feel like that is that there's a bridge between the two.
Mm.
You could talk to other experts in digital citizenship or media literacy and have them separate. I just happen to be a person that believes that there's a really strong connection between the two, and that it's on all of us to provide opportunities to experience that. And the fact that one of those competencies is about being informed,
Mm-hmm.
which I feel like is the media literacy competency,
Mm-hmm.
is the way that we can address this in our classrooms.
Yeah, we've looked at analyzing the web address, analyzing who the author of an article was, what are they posting, what might be their agenda for posting this, what do they have to gain, yeah, what's their bias. There's so many great media literacy resources out there for teachers to bring that conversation, and that's one of those contents, right? So if you don't have a media literacy course, for example, in your school, right, whose responsibility is that? And I think it kind of falls in the same lines of digital citizenship, is that we all kind of have a role in helping teach and promote media literacy as well.
Have you ever gone to the Tree Octopus site in Seattle, Washington? It's
No.
one of my favorite. It's just fun. But if you go to that site, it's got videos, it's got documents. You would think it's really accurate.
The kids believe it.
Yeah, right. That there's like a tree octopus. Wow.
I guess the next question that I've got is, so if we know that younger students are going to be online, and we know that quite often, even though social media and the internet in general can be extremely beneficial and very positive and help develop stories and skills and all these amazing things, but there is a slightly dark side to it as well. And there's been this kind of debate as, should we concentrate on trying to stop kids under 13 from joining these sites, or do we accept that kids under 13 are going to be on these sites either way and prepare them for what they should do if they encounter anything, or how they should behave, or how they should react to something, whether that is cyberbullying or whether that's a sensitive piece of media or something inappropriate or something violent, that type of thing. I don't want this to take a dark turn, but I think it's important, just because I know that there's some pretty bad stuff online out there. What type of work have you done, I guess, to help, I don't want to say prepare students for that happening, but just almost help them understand that stuff's out there and how to behave if they do come across it?
Yeah. I mean, I know, before I actually answer the question, I know me as a 13-year-old kid or younger, if somebody tells me not to do something, I feel like I'm going to try that much harder to probably find my way into that space,
right?
So,
right.
I think it's got to be like the prepare approach. We've got to, instead of just shutting it down and trying to block them out, because I feel like they'll work that much harder to get in.
Right, 100%.
So, I mean, in terms of what we've done, we've actually had, and I know fear sells, we've had a night with parents where we've actually had our school resource officers share some scary scenarios of what has happened with people hiding their identities on the internet, and actual situations and scenarios in our community of kids making themselves vulnerable by being on certain platforms or by the information that they've shared out there. So, we've known that there, like you mentioned, there's a dark side out there, and we can't, and that may never go away. So that's even why these conversations are important. You can talk about the scenarios.
Yeah, I think one of the things I learned last year is that they didn't always know what to do when they got themselves into situations where bad things were happening, bad things were being said, images were posted, conversations were happening. And I think we've been working this year with some of the 4th grade students in our district, and giving them scenarios and saying, how do you work this out? Like, what steps do you take? And it's not so much that it needs to be specific to an app, but kind of a skill. Like, how do you break down this problem and figure it out? And how do you, maybe get away from this problem without being next.
Yeah. We've talked about being a digital first responder, right? Like screenshot,
right.
or know that that's a tool you can use. Being an upstander. Sometimes if you see something that's not right, tell someone, tell a trusted, I know sometimes kids may be embarrassed to do that, but
When I was a kid, we had an online neighborhood watch, and you talked about it. There was a plan. If there was an emergency, something happened, where did you go in the neighborhood? And so I've actually done that with my own son, but it is an online neighborhood watch. I mean, he's gone to a lot of conferences with me. So, he hand chose, if he needed to talk to somebody, I need a safe place to go, my safe haven. These are important conversations for our kids to have, both that on and offline, that I've got someplace and I've got a person that I know I can go to help navigate this.
Yeah, I think that's really important, Marialice, because I recall, I grew up just as the internet was kind of coming into its own with regards to content. So I remember, students in my class or in my school, you'd find that some pretty disturbing pieces of content would be shared and sent around. And some of that content can really shock, I think, children, and I think make them, disturbed and kind of crawl into themselves a little bit. And I think that knowing that there's somebody there that they can go to and speak about it that isn't necessarily their parents, because their parents could be like, well, what were you doing in there in the first place? You know what I mean? Or what kind of friends have you got who are sharing that? Having somebody who's non-judgmental as a figure, I think would have been really good back then, just because you need to offload this. And what ends up happening is, I think with certain pieces of content, there's this natural phenomena that happens where when somebody experiences it or sees it, it disturbs them, but they want to show somebody else in a way, just to kind of offload it, and then it becomes viral, and then you've just got people becoming really desensitized to things. So I think that you're 100% right. Having somebody there, an adult who is, they can go to and say, hey, look, I saw this, I didn't understand it, or I saw this and it really disturbed me, what should I do? That type of thing is really important. Then, of course, being able to help them know which pitfalls to kind of avoid. And that leads into my second question. So privacy policies, right? Sharing data, allowing apps to join your own apps. Another one that a lot of parents I know have a big concern, which is in-app purchases, loot boxes in gaming, these types of things. Are those types of elements that you discuss with your students and that type of thing? Or are you going to get to that point, or how does it work?
Yeah, we haven't done a lot with gaming outside. We had our students create their own digital games using voxels, and we've used Microsoft Arcade Builder, things like that. But I don't know as if we've really had the conversations about that particular aspect of digital gaming. But we have talked, here in New York and in the States. I know you mentioned GDPR. I see people mentioning FERPA and COPA and SIPA and all of those things. I think it's an important conversation to have with students about understanding their data and how it might be shared. So I don't know if you have any experiences with that or with the.
I feel like we look at tech policies with our educators a lot, and then inform the educators to bring it to work with the students. But I don't know if per se that I've worked with students about those topics.
Mm-hmm. But it's some stuff with phishing and emails and stuff last year. Wow.
Yeah, trying to keep your information safe, but really what we're, creating a strong password. And how can you be alert for someone that might be trying to get your personal information,
Right. And that goes back to our media literacy too, and being informed and copyright. And so there are so many layers, and this is why we need to continue to add them into absolutely everything that we do every single day.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So what we'll do is I'd like anybody in the chat, if you have any questions that you'd like asking, ask now. And whilst you're thinking of questions to ask, I'll ask another question to you guys. So we spoke a little bit about curation, and obviously Wakelet is a curation platform. Aside from portfolios and that type of thing. What other activities do you think that Curation can provide that helps hone those digital citizenship skills?
I would say when we getting back to being informed, for a student to be able to curate some examples of things that they found on the web that aren't true. They can go back and, when we just looked at what happened with the climate protests or the climate rally here in New York City and Greta Thunberg, and some people that were anti-climate action had posted a picture of a park that the protesters had trashed. Well, that park was was a picture from years ago at Hyde Park that wasn't even true. So I'm thinking that the students could curate examples in terms of around media literacy.
Kind of like testing each other. So I can create this for other students to kind of experience and go through to make informed decisions. That would be really powerful too.
Right, that's one of the things that we found. Yeah, I think that the whole idea around fake news and the reliability of sources is really important, because what we found is teachers who are using Wakelet to set these digital storytelling assignments, okay? And the idea behind it, the idea behind it was to say, when it first started, it would say, the teachers would say, okay, I'd like you to create a collection on, I don't know, let's take climate change, for example. But then as the questions that the teachers are getting back from the students was like, okay, well, which page of Google should I go to? Like, should I get something from BBC? Should I get something from CNN? Like, which one, And then rather than being like shrugging the shoulders, the educator community, the teachers that use Wakelet, as amazing as they are, they're like, okay, this is a really good opportunity to hone those digital citizenship skills. So rather than just saying, I'd like you to create a collection on climate change, it would be, I would like you to create a collection on climate change using sources from 2011, using articles from 2008. I'd like you to find an article on climate change that you think comes from a source that is denying it. I'd like you to find one from a source which is that type of thing. And it may seem a little bit sophisticated for the students, but the feedback that we've got has been amazing, because it helps the students understand that Wakelet is a way, I guess, to discern whether or not something is, true or false in a way that I guess algorithms just can't do.
I know there's a DigCit challenge going on right now through DigCitCommit.org. And I mean, when we talk about the 5 competencies that Marialice shared about being informed, inclusive, balanced, engaged, and alert, could there be could you create a collection around those competencies? Let's look at the impacts of screen time, or let's look at what it means to be balanced. I think that's something that everybody struggles with. When we talk about being inclusive, I mean, how awesome is the fact that an immersive reader is built right in to Wakelet? So, I mean, right there in itself brings in some inclusiveness. But I don't know, I could see Wakelet being used as a tool, and I would love to do that with our students here as part of that challenge.
Amazing. As Callum has said in the chat there, we've got a really cool feature dropping today, probably immediately after this webinar. So in around 15 minutes, we're going to be announcing it. And those of you who are in the Wakelet community will know what it is, because you've been able to play with it for the past couple of weeks and kind of help us understand how we can improve it and that type of thing. But yeah, read mode will be launching in 15 minutes. And what read mode allows you to do is essentially take an article, click a button, and that presents the article with just the text. So in a really clear visual way, so it doesn't open up the article in a new tab, keeps it on Wakelet. And the really awesome part of that is that, as you just said, Michael, Microsoft Immersive Reader is built into that, it's plugged in. So it means that any student of any ability, any article that you share with them, they'll be able to click on that and view it in 60 different languages. They can show all the grammar options, all of that type of thing. And yeah, that's going to be dropping in 15 minutes. So in 15 minutes on all of your Wakelet accounts, that's going to be live. So we'd love you all to have a play around with it and give us your feedback and think about ways that it could be used in the classroom. What do you guys think about that? Are you pumped?
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
fabulous.
We're going to get right on that once we hang up here. I got to give a shout out. I see Deb Zeman is in here and Tisha Poncio. When we talk about like students being amazing digital citizens, what that group of students shared last week as part of the DigCit Summit it was one of the best presentations that I've ever sat in of any conference ever. It was virtual, all led by students, and Marialice can agree.
Oh, and I want you to know, I'm so sorry if I can't see that far in the chat. Sorry to me, but I'm glad that you just mentioned that because it was incredible. And that's where, how do we continue to find those authentic audiences for students to really be deliberate and for our classrooms to be deliberate and meaningful, like collaborations. And that was the whole week. It was a wonderful week.
We've got one question here from Georgia, which I think is quite interesting, just before we wrap up. How have you got parents on board with digital use? Georgia has parents in her high school who won't allow their kids on any sites. In fact, she says they rarely allow them to use computers or don't even allow them to use phones. When it comes to like technophobe parents who might be quite restrictive with their children's computer use or logging into sites and that type of thing, I'm assuming that's quite a challenge. How do you sort of tackle that issue?
That's a tough one to tackle. I mean, you have to respect where that parent is coming from. Yeah. So, I mean, and from my opinion as an educator, all I can do is really share what I think the benefits are in a respectful conversation. I'd feel a little bit sad of the opportunities that are being shut down for that student for that reason. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I mean, I'd be curious to know, why do you have that fear? But just it's important to have that conversation.
This is why we wrote the DigCit Kids book, which is like started out with my journey about learning alongside the mother and son account. But we added other contributing authors like Michael Dresik and others around the world so that there were vignettes. Each chapter kind of gave you an idea about why not to be scared, like that positive aspect, and that it is an opportunity to engage in a really like critical conversation with your child or teen, and not having that opportunity is such a missed, not to have that conversation is a missed opportunity. And so I always, when working with parents, I go, and not just as a parent am I trying to tell my story, but now with that DigCit Kids book, I get to use other vignettes within that book to really highlight how other people are doing this around the world, and that the struggle is real. And it's not about being tech savvy. It's about just being willing to learn alongside.
Yeah, and I think we have to give our parents a chance to really see what the kids are doing. I mean, sometimes our kids go home and say things like, oh, we played a game on the computer today, but if the parent doesn't know that our game consisted of all kinds of really difficult questions or, challenging situations, they might just see it like, oh, they're playing a game again. I think we have to have a conversation with our parents too that says, this is what we're doing with our technology. Yeah. This is how we're using it in a meaningful way. And this is what our outcome is, our intended outcome is for it. Yeah. And hopefully that helps that conversation move away from avoiding it.
And, to tie in, I think what we did last year by having that, we hosted a student-led DigCit Summit, and we invited parents and the adults and the community to come and learn with the kids. When you see it from that perspective, that this is like the most powerful learning tool, that starts to change those really fearful parents.
And Deb in the chat just said one of the things that the amazing Tisha and Deb do is a parent digital citizenship academy. So at the beginning of the year, I'm assuming that it's educating the parents on what digital citizenship is and what to expect for the rest of the school year. But I'm sure Deb would be able to. Oh, Deb wants to. She's corrected me. That's a really cool idea, though, Deb. I think that would go a really long way to helping parents understand a little bit more about what digital citizenship means. So the last question that we've got, and I think that it's an awkward one, but it is an important one, from Linda Edwards. Certain game platforms have a far from nice community. How do you handle this? Her students gave her specific examples from games that they played. Have you encountered any issues like this, and how do you go about tackling those?
Well, my chapter in the DigCit Kids book was all about Minecraft education and how we've used Minecraft as a platform to help grow digital citizenship in our school. even within our own small group of students in the same Minecraft world, they can break down something, literally break apart someone's build or world. So we've had those conversations inside of that space. And I know Marialice can talk to one of the panelists or one of the sessions in the Sit Week last week was around esports. We are looking to possibly get something like that going here in Lakeshore so that we can essentially in school talk about what, effective gaming looks like, what a positive gaming community should look and feel like. I don't know if you want to.
I want to give a shout out to Steve Isaac, and if you're not following, I think it's his Twitter handle is Mr._Isaac. He's out in New Jersey. A lot of his classes, he's actually live streaming on Twitch, so you can learn with the class. It's really amazing, but all through gaming and how at the foundation of everything that he does is about building digital citizenship skills with his students. And just like Michael said, it's just as easy to destroy somebody. It's just as easy as it is. It's just as easy to build it up. And when we allow students to kind of come up with these norms and they're developing it rather than the adults doing it, that changes the platform for gaming as well.
And at our summit last year, we actually had the students create podcasts around some of their favorite games. And the students taught each other. So they had to analyze the positives, the dangers. They gave it a review. So they really looked at it from all angles. So I think that was powerful for our students to hear those podcasts and for our teachers to hear those podcasts with games and apps that they may not be familiar with.
Right.
We asked them what they wanted us to know about it too. Sometimes, I would go home and my kids would be playing a game and they, they're at it all night and you're like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. And so they, why are you doing this? Why are you so engaged in it? Why should I let you play this? And they had great writing assignments they started as a writing assignment, and then they took it into the podcast and did a Bunty poster for their podcast and did all kinds of fun stuff with it, and
totally engaged.
Oh, totally. And all about having teachers listen and share it. It was.
I think that gaming's just to kind of add my kind of 10 cents in. Gaming's kind of a bit of a double-edged sword because I know that for me growing up, gaming was a really important part of my childhood. Like it taught me to be imaginative. It taught me, how to be resourceful. Obviously, it depends on the game. It's changed a little bit now because it's become more social. Gaming's become a lot more social. So you can expect if you enter an average shooter game, let's say, online, that everyone's going to have headsets and everyone's going to be hurling abuse at each other, and the chat section is not going to be quite as civil as it is on this webinar. Let's just say that. What I found, one of my friends who has kids says that he goes into the options of each game that the kids play and sees how he can reduce that opportunity for any abuse to come through. So what you will find is in most of these games, for any kind of parents that are listening, there will be options for you to turn off the headsets, to turn off any kind of voice communication between the other players, to turn off the chat box. There will be ways to customize it to kind of help enhance that experience. But I think that when it comes to gaming, from my experience personally, I really loved it when I was younger. It helped me develop as a person. It made me more imaginative, more creative. I think I really could lose myself in these worlds. Has changed a little bit now, though. It tends to be a bit more repetitive, but it depends on the game. And I think that Minecraft is a really great example of one that, has got this huge appeal just because it allows you to build, it allows you to create. And the same for Roblox as well. I have a friend of mine who his son plays Roblox all the time, and it's very similar to Minecraft. It's a little bit more interactive, I think. But it's all he does, and he finds that there's so much to do in it. The community is very friendly. He lives in a different country, so they don't have actual access to the credits. So they have these like Robux, they call them. It's like the online credit that they can use to buy tools and things like that. So for his birthday, I sent him one across, and he goes crazy. He sends me recorded messages back saying, "Oh, you're amazing. Thank you so much." I think gaming means a lot to students and young people. So I think rather than take it away, it's more about, can we restrict any opportunities for anything bad to happen whilst they're gaming?
Anybody needs to see a great gaming YouTuber, Nick A30 out of Canada. he embeds digital citizenship into every single one of his YouTubes.
Oh, amazing.
And I love that you said about, being able to turn certain features off. I think there's also an obligation, maybe from the developer's standpoint, to create features and build that into your tool to have that safe space for parents to have some control over it, like you had just described. I think that's important too.
100%. So we've got Diala Dean saying that read mode is open, which I think signals the close of this webinar, as everyone can hurry up and give it a try. Callum's trying to pretend like he leaked it. Yeah, right, Callum. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. Honestly, it's been really, really useful for me, and I'm sure the community, everybody who'll listen to this afterwards as well. Everything that we've spoken about today, the whole webinar will be replayable tomorrow. We'll share it as a Wakelet collection along with some examples, some resources, and the chat transcript, which I think in this case has been amazing. Thank you all in the chat for all of the ideas and the questions that you've had. It's really been a good one, honestly, really heard some amazing ideas and gave us a lot to speak about. So yeah, Michael, Marialice, Deanne, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And yeah, watch out tomorrow. The full recap will be online on our social. And yeah, go ahead and try read mode and let us know what you think. We think it's a game changer. So let's wait and see.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'll speak to you all soon. Thank you so much, everybody.